Welcome. I think I may have had to have split this footage over 2 vlogs, so welcome back to day 2 of getting ready to potentially evacuate the property. Today is the hottest and windiest and most dangerous day of the day of 3. This is the day where we've got the extreme fire danger rating. It's very windy. It's going to get windier as a front moves in from the southwest, and that's going to bring with it dry lightning, which is, well, potentially dry lightning, which is lightning without rain, which is not a good sign. So what I've done, fruitless though it might appear to be considering it's pretty much already dried up, is that I have watered around the house just to get a little bit of moisture into the ground. I have in fact also watered the roof of the house. Essentially that's to help try and keep the gutter moist, and I have just been setting up the sprinklers. I've got one on this side of the house to tackle this part and one on the other side of the house. This side of the house is a little bit more resilient in the sense that it's protected by this flower bed, and also this patch of lawn for some reason is always particularly green. I think it's the most damp part of the lawn, and it starts to get dry as we get to the lawn, which is underneath the eucalyptus tree. So I set up the sprinkler there. Later on this afternoon I'll probably set that going when the lightning starts moving through, and fingers crossed I don't have to evacuate, but I will of course keep you updated if I choose to do that. I'm going to seek shelter indoors now, get out of this heat. Welcome to another day. We survived last night, and luckily for us nothing very dramatic happened. Other people unfortunately weren't so lucky, but if you can tell by our trees, we have been there. We do know what it's like. We wouldn't wish that on anyone. So the weather's taken a turn. It's much cooler, not that you can tell by looking, but it's probably knocked about 10 degrees off. I'd say currently now it's low 20s, and it's due to get even cooler as the week progresses from here on in throughout the next week, and we are in fact due quite a lot of rain. So I would ordinarily be out now mowing the lawns, but because of yesterday and because of the sort of ongoing consequences of that, today is a total fire ban day, and whilst I think technically I can mow the lawn, I am choosing not to. But I got up bright and early this morning and I went into town, and I just wanted to quickly show you some of the bits and pieces I picked up in preparation for lawnmower repair and maintenance, which I mentioned last week. So I did end up getting a new battery for the Cox Lawn Boss, and some engine oil ready for changing that. And then I picked up, because I've never actually bothered changing the oil before, hopefully something like that will be useful based on if we need it, a new air filter, spark plugs, and new oil filters, one for each of the mowers. And I picked up also this spark plug removing tool and this oil filter spanner. So I'm hoping it'll basically be a case of changing the air filters where needed, which I can do, putting in a new battery, which I can do, changing the oil, which I don't know how to do, putting on a new oil filter, which I don't know how to do, maybe putting on new spark plugs, which I don't know how to do. And hopefully between all of that, I will have a couple of nicely serviced mowers which I can rely upon for the purposes of protecting my property from the ravages of grass fires. I also picked up some new Flyscreen mesh for the fly screen on the front door, because although I replaced that many years ago now, it is starting to get a bit torn and ripped at the bottom. I haven't tried this one before, but it wasn't that expensive, and apparently it helps to be able to see really nicely through it. A 15% clearer view. I'm not that bothered. What I really wanted was the super duper blocks out tiny insects one, but they didn't seem to have any of that. So I'm going to go and give this a try. However, my first task, now that it seems as if, at least for the next week, we won't need to evacuate, is to plant out the citrus tree. I'm sure I mentioned it previously, but just to reiterate, this is a calamansi kumquat, purchased because Will and I enjoyed the refreshing drink of calamansi juice when we were on Borneo, and this is the label that Will gave me in lieu of the tree at Christmas time. The tree was waiting here when I got home, and now what I'm going to do is read all about it so I can choose where to put it in terms of its overall growth and spread. Beta and I have settled on this spot. Apparently this tree can grow relatively large, but pruned, having measured it out, it'll grow to about the size of this orange, which is about 3 meters high and just over 2 meters wide, but it is pruned to keep it in this shape. So I've put it in a spot where it'll grow this sort of width and the same here, just to mean that there's enough space for us to be able to walk past it. Obviously keeping the trees pruned, I don't like paths too narrow, and also so that it won't grow too close to the eaves, because I do need access to this with my ladder to be able to get up there to clean the gutters. So I sort of don't want it abutting here like the camellia tree is, because that's no good to me. So all being well, it should grow to fill this space. We'll probably have a little bit of a path between the two here, and there'll be a little bit of a path here. So looking at it, I'm thinking probably got space here for one more citrus, and then if I do a bit of research and get something that's relatively dwarfing, I could probably put it in here. What I don't want is a tree that's going too far too close to the gutter, but also that doesn't really block the view from the window, which is why I'm thinking a dwarfing tree. So then we'll have another short row of citrus here, creating a bit of a citrus grove, which would be very nice. I'm going to plant it out. That's that all done. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the fly screen. I'll show you what I mean. It's all sort of starting to fray here, and it's therefore not serving the purpose it's intended to serve. So what I'm going to do is remove this which is holding it on, or at least sort of clamping it in, put up the new stuff, and I'll show you when I'm done. I thought I'd quickly show you phase one. So basically, though you probably can't see it, maybe now, I have taken the old fly screening off and I've put up new stuff. All I need to do now is trim it along the side and along the bottom, and then put the grill back over the front of it. This is actually pleasingly simple. It's spoken the instructions about fitting it in with the flange and blah blah blah. We don't have that, so literally all I've done is use these 1mm tacks, and I've just intermittently tacked it on, starting here and then trying to pull it taut as I go. Very, very simple. There probably will come a time I need to get a new one, because you can see all like the historic staples and nails from where this has been done before, and I'll run out of space eventually. But I think it's probably been about 8-9 years since I last did this, so who knows, maybe it'll outlive us in terms of having space, not this mesh. Anyway, I'm going to finish the job and then I'm going to go in and relax, because it is still pretty warm today, but I'm glad to get that done because there's a lot of insects about at this time of year, and I wasn't comfortable having that massive gash at the bottom there. I've just finished mowing the lawns before a spate of wet weather, and I observed this. This is our dogwood, and this is a pleasing sight to see. It feels to me like it has outgrown this cage, so I'm going to now make it a new one, and I thought I'd quickly show you what that entails. Quick recap. Before Will and I built the wood store building, this area was enclosed with a chicken wire fence. It was an orchard, so this apple and this peach and some other not very successful trees which have subsequently been grubbed out were within the chicken wire. But Will and I didn't really want that structure anymore. We didn't really see the need for it. Because the main menace to these trees isn't in fact the animals that were trying to be kept out of the area, the wallabies. The main menace is the birds, and the birds could just fly in anyway, so it was essentially pointless. But we've repurposed a lot of the chicken wire, both inside the wood store building for the construction of bays for our firewood, and as you can see, for the construction of cages around the trees. Now, the wallabies, aforementioned wallabies, pose no threat to a tree this size, but they do pose threats to plants of this size, hence why these plants are in cages until such a time as they're big enough to be able to fend for themselves. But several bales of chicken wire are outstanding, so I rolled it up. I measured it, rolled it up, and each bale has a little tag on it to tell me how much chicken wire is contained in that bale. This one had been used for something else, so I'm probably going to grab this one and make my new tree guard out of that. And whilst I'm at it, I'm thinking I might also look to purchase the remaining trees for the citrus grove this afternoon. So I may go ahead and make several tree guards out of this bit of chicken wire, just so I've got some ready to go whenever those trees arrive. I'm going to take this over to my workshop area, my potting shed, and I will cut it up with tin snips, and I will then show you the finished product. There we are then. I'm somewhat pleased with that. The cage certainly is providing this tree with more space to grow now, which is good. It doesn't have to be a massively bigger cage. The tree is not going to suddenly double in size overnight. What I'm not too pleased with is the state of these canes. They're terrible. Will previously has made stakes out of wood I have found in the property, and I have sourced some which I've left by Will's workshop for many months now, waiting to be turned into stakes. Will's had other things on his mind, but these little garden canes are just not cutting the mustard. So I'm probably going to head into town later this week. They'll have to do for now. I just have to hope a kangaroo doesn't jump into the cage, because it will probably knock it over if it did. It's only very tenuously attached to the ground. Anyway, you can buy these sort of green plasticky ones which are much more sturdy. The trouble with the chicken wire is that if it isn't sort of supported up the whole length of it, it can collapse a bit like that, which isn't what I want. I want a nice taut cage around the tree. And I have made additional tube out of that bale of chicken wire, which I can quickly show you now. Essentially, I made that one we just saw, this one, which is the same circumference because I folded the bale in half and cut it in half, but as you can see it's much taller, which leaves me with this one. So I essentially ended up with 2 tubes of this size in practice, and I cut one of the tubes in half this way as well. So I've got 3 guards out of it, 1 thinnish, tallish one, and 2 roundish, shortish ones, which are perfectly adequate for different types of jobs. I just need to finish making this one, which essentially just involves cable tying the two cut ends together. And then I'll add it to my pile of pre-prepared plant cages ready for my next purchases. There we go. Just to reiterate, the reason I have to make these cages is essentially because of the extremely high proportion of wallabies which come into the garden and like to eat the plants. For example, this is a wisteria which would be like this on this part of the fence as well, except for the fact the wallabies eat all of the leaves that they can easily reach. So that's why this wisteria is only above fence height, which is a shame. And also the reason I make it out of chicken wire is because we just have such a large quantity of it, and therefore essentially it's free. But the other thing I do like about these, which you're probably picking up on, is that they're very non-intrusive. So they're in fact, they're very discreet, and I like that. It's a shame that I have to cage plants. I wish that I could just plant my garden with impunity like I did in Scotland, but I can't. So at least, whilst my plants are caged, you can still see them, and the cage is somewhat unobtrusive.